What if I told you you don't have to sit alone in grief anymore? This is Natasha Smith, and you are listening to the Can You Just Sit With Me podcast. Welcome back, friends. I have a special treat for you today as I sit with one of my sweet friends, Jodi Grubbs, whom I know and love in real life, which you will hear a little about in this episode. Jodi is the podcast host of Our Island in the City and a slow living advocate. She is the author of a children's book called The Island Adventures of Lily and Oliver, and co-author of a Bible study called The Friendship Cafe. We are going to talk about her latest work, Live Slowly, A Gentle Invitation to Exhale, which is available now wherever books are sold. And I can't wait for you to hear from her. Now, this is also a sweet episode as it ends this season of the Can You Just Sit With Me podcast. So be sure to catch next season in the fall. But in the meanwhile, tune in to episodes that you may have missed or put your favorites on repeat. But for now, pull up a seat, come and sit with us and join the conversation. So I am so super excited to be sitting with my friend Jodi today. And as always, I'm just going to jump right in to ask Jodi this question. Can you tell us about a time when you wanted to ask someone this question? Can you just sit with me?
Hi, Natasha. I'm glad to be here with you today. That is such a good question. Yes, I have had that happen many times. I can think probably in the last few years, I would say it's happened more around times when I have been through a difficult season and maybe someone just didn't understand and they didn't want to talk about it. And so they would just kind of leave, like almost leave the conversation. And I would want to say, oh, can you just sit with me? Like, I'm not really looking for answers to what I should do or say, maybe just sit with me.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Absolutely.
It's about church hurt, or it could be a friendship that I lost. And, we know, but sometimes we just want someone to be with us.
Oh, that's so good. We know, but sometimes we just want someone to just be with us. I love that so much. And this is such like a special podcast because Jodi and I literally sit with each other quite often for coffee because we are local writer friends, and it's been such a gift and such a blessing to know you, Jodi, and to have these opportunities to sit with you. So this is kind of a fun, cool opportunity that we have to just sit on the podcast today and to kind of share your story and your new book, Live Slowly, which is such a beautiful book. So I'm so excited to dive in and to talk about it, but I wanted to let our listeners know just how we're connected and in real life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's such a pleasure to know you. And you have sat with me in some really hard times.
Yeah, so we're gonna dive in a little bit more. So I want you to tell us about your story and how it informs your new beautiful book, Live Slowly: A Gentle Invitation to Exhale.
Sure. Well, I grew up on an island in the Caribbean, so I joke that slow living is in my blood. It's all I knew in my formational years. So I'm aware of how to slow down and pause in life. But then, I grew up, came to the U.S., got married, and I've had seasons where slowing down has been chosen for me. So that was the first time was the death of my first husband from a road rage accident. And then other times it would happen again over the years with maybe my daughter. I would want to bring her to do all the things when she was little, and my body just couldn't keep up socially with the pace here in the U.S. So those things happened to me. And then I thought, well, I'm going to write about them because I keep talking to people about this idea of slowing down. And so that's sort of how it integrates with my book and why it became a personal sort of like a personal mission for me to help others slow
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. I just love everything about the book because me as such a go 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 fast pace, and I know I don't want to get ahead of myself because we're going to talk about why we feel the need to feel busy all the time. But yeah, I just love everything about the book because it was needed for me, and I know that everyone who is listening needs it as well because of our culture. And I love how the distinction that you make between, I mean, like you say, you were an island girl and then moving to the US, making a shift because here is so fast paced, right?
It is. It's our American culture, but Natasha, it's not always like that in so many places in the rest of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so crazy. It's so
Yeah.
crazy to think about. So I want to kind of start with the acronym of slow, of the word slow that you included in the book. So can you just take us through the meaning that you kind of assigned to that?
Sure. I noticed the words that went with S.L.O.W. just seemed just spot on for my life, and then I started seeing it applied to the people I was talking with. So when you break down slow, the S is for shift. So nobody wants to be told you have to slow down, or it's like it can't sound bossy. It's more of, well, let's shift some things. It's a pivot, sort of like the shifts on a bike. And then L is linger. So it's important to be present, to linger and stay with something for a little bit, which is similar to the title of your book. Can you just sit with me? That's lingering. O is open hands. There's so much control we don't have.
Yeah.
And so when we have open hands to God, we can slow down to trust a little bit more, that our open hands are a vulnerability, but also an openness to what he might be showing us in the season of slowing down. And then W is watchful. It's so easy to get right back into fast paced. I've had it happen to myself many times, even though I'm a slow living guide. And so we just want to be watchful that the tools that we start using to slow down, that we don't forget those, or don't get in such a hustle mentality ourselves that we lose that. Yeah.
Yeah, those are so wonderful. And let me tell you, so as you were talking, walking us through this acronym of SLOW, it occurred to me that I've moved really, really fast through the first part of this our conversation. So I want to slow down just a little bit because I know I have so much I would love to cover and love to talk about, and we might just have to bring you back to talk about all the
Okay.
things. But when you said that slow is sometimes chosen for us, so let's talk about that a little bit because your story, for one, with the death of your first husband, and then how you started to say slow is sometimes chosen for us. So I want to talk about that a little bit. So I rushed past it, but I'm coming back to it, slowing it down a little bit so we can grasp some of these concepts and how, again, it informs your work. So.
Sure. So a lot of times things happen to us, they're out of our control. And for instance, maybe a health issue. I know I had to have several knee surgeries. I have one knee replacement I got in my 40s, and that slowed me down. And it felt like everyone else was going past me, and I was having to elevate my leg and, do PT for weeks. And I finally had to get to a place of acceptance. That's really the only way to work through that's where I was, and my body was going to tell me no. And so once I accepted that, I was able to settle into a little bit of stillness and start reflecting on things in my life, whether it was just trying to listen to what God was saying or taking time to really be present with someone. I couldn't just jump up and run and do something else. So that's one example of when slowing down is chosen for us. But there's so many throughout our lifetime. We don't always see it that way, though, when it's happening.
Right. So even I'm thinking about um, when I think about, like, can you just sit with me, or someone who's walking through a loss, or they experience a sudden loss or unexpected loss, or even if they saw it coming, a death has happened, something, a loss of whether it's a thing or a person, it makes us slow down.
It does. It's so hard in the moment to appreciate that, right? But
Right.
sometimes life just cannot keep going at the pace
Mhm.
that it is, and
That's
so it can also be a gift. When my first husband was in a shock trauma ICU, he was in a hospital for 9 months, and there was a time when I got bit by a brown recluse spider. I ended up in that same hospital for 3 days. I was knocked out cold while they got the poison out of me. I didn't know that I was knocked out. Last thing I remember was just seeing all these plastic surgeons looking at my foot. But I think my body had to stop. I was so busy with my job
Mhm.
and coming back and forth to the hospital, let alone dealing with my own emotions of what had happened. I think God sort of just said, okay, you're going to have a little siesta right here, right now. Yeah. And then you'll be able to keep going for a while after that. So that's a big situation where something tiny escalated and I
Yeah.
had no control.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That is so huge too. Like you said, when we're in the middle of it, we're like, what in the world? But um
Oh, I
kind of
was pretty upset. I thought, really?
yeah,
This is really not good
yeah.
timing.
Right. It's not good timing. Oh my goodness. I want to so you have a quote, your what you've written in your book, a quote. It says, maybe it's a good thing we don't write our stories. Sure, we make decisions, we plot a course, and we go full steam ahead with our hopes and dreams, but we don't actually write our story. God does. So why do you think this is important for us to realize?
Yeah. So this took me a while to realize. Yeah. It's important because we have this idea that we are really in control, that we make
Yeah.
things happen. But you and I both know we don't. We can plan our course, like the Bible verse says too, but God, directs our ways. But He also wrote this into history long before we were even born. And so He knows the course that our life will take. He knows the people that will be in and out of our life, the losses. Um, and I think being able to take your hands off of that, you're not clutching so hard, you're letting go. And not to sound cliche, but it does let God um, lead your life. He's already written your story. So it's a lot of letting go and slowing down to say, okay, there's a higher power, and that's God. And
Yeah.
so it takes a little bit of stress off of us also to know we don't have that kind of control.
Mm,
Yeah.
so good. Would you say, and I think you've kind of already said it, would you say that it has taken life, like things happen in life, to realize that?
Yes, definitely. I'm 51 and there's things that I wish I knew in my 20s
Yeah.
and 30s. I would have been able to not glide through them, but maybe not be so not fight against it so hard if
Yeah.
I only knew. Yeah.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. I always tell my husband, like, I feel like I'm kicking against the bricks. And that's
There you go.
exactly. Yeah. It's like, no, you God is in control, but you're not in control of these things. Let him lead, let him guide. And it goes a whole lot smoother. But it's
Yeah.
like we have to, continue to tell ourselves and change our mindset, shift, to
Shift.
say
Yeah.
God
Mhm.
has it.
Yeah.
I love this quote that you included in your book from, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Tutu Mora.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay. She
Mhm.
writes, feeling the need to be busy all the time is a trauma response and a fear-based distraction from what you'd be forced to acknowledge and feel if you slowed down. So I found this to be so true in my life. So tell us how this played out in your life.
Yeah, I've had to reread this many times as I
Mhm.
wrote it into my book because I thought, oh my word, that hits it perfectly.
Yeah.
So kind of backing up a little bit, when people ask me, well, what are your struggles with slowing down? It's easy to say like, oh, FOMO, I don't want to, I'm that fear of missing out. Like, I just don't want to miss anything. And that's true. That's like the social side, but the deeper side
Mm.
is I don't want to have to stop and be with God and dive into the really hard, painful things of life that have happened. We don't want to slow down for that. And so I would find myself being busy to not have to have a hard conversation or not have to do the hard thing. And I didn't realize a lot of my busyness was like this hamster wheel of really trying to turn away from hard things.
Yeah.
Because I felt productive when I was busy,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so, I think that's so powerful, to be like come to that realization and become self-aware of that, because a lot of us do it. And I think even those who may be listening right now may be like, oh snap, that's me.
Yes. Yes,
um
absolutely.
and so what would we do with that? Let me see. So I think a good segue is to go even further into live slowly. What can we um do, like slowing down? um how can we slow down, and why is it so hard?
Yeah. So I go over, and we might be talking about this later too, but I go over
Mhm.
18 different shifts. They're like slow living practices, but they're really shifts in my book. There's one in each chapter. And there's so many ways we can slow down that we might not have thought of. So, like, one could be awakening to beauty. I talk
Yeah.
about just if you go on your porch for 10 minutes and just look at the trees and the clouds and listen to the birds and smell the flowers, um, we have to slow down to even notice it. And that's why, like, when you see a little kid bending over to pick up a little flower on the sidewalk and parents are like, come on, we're late, that's their whole world. Well, they're so little, they're closer to the beauty. And we just miss it because we're not looking up or down. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's one shift. Another is just being present to others. That's a beautiful way to slow down. And then lingering is another one. So a lot of it is interaction with God, with ourselves, with others. I talk about being more than doing, but there are things that we can do to slow
Yes.
down. And those are just some of my favorite ones, along with
Yeah.
acceptance.
I
Yeah.
love that so much. I love that it incorporates being with God, others, and ourselves. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
It's so good. And I when I read through your book, because I was just so honored to read in like an early copy, and so I had the electronic copy, and then I had my print copy, and then I ordered like another one when it was on pre-order. So I have a few copies, and I probably would do a giveaway since
Oh, good.
for this episode. But like I'm finding myself, because I'm going through it again, because I really need these shifts in my life, and it's hard because it's kind of like, again, trying to fight against the cultural thing that has, that's kind of gripping us, because we're here in this world, in this flesh, and we're fighting against it when we try to live slowly. But so thank you for sharing some of the slow living shifts. But how many are there? 18?
18.
18
Yeah.
shifts. So everyone who's listening and um to this conversation, to this episode, you need to get the book. You need to get it for everyone in your family. So we can really make this shift in our culture, not only for ourselves, and then for those who are around us, because it's just such a needed thing. And I think it will bring us so much healing, because we do have to, it makes us be intentional of sitting with ourselves, others, and God. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So, I want to chat real every time I say quickly, I'm like, I feel like I'll get tapped on the hand. No, slow down. Oh gosh. But let's take a minute to
Oh,
talk about how slowing down can help us see the beauty in brokenness. So we kind of talk. I love that example that you gave about the little child, but yeah. So just kind of chat a little bit about that.
yeah. So I grew up playing in a cove of sea glass when I was a little girl. And if there's any listeners who are collectors of sea glass or beach glass, you know that sea glass goes through this tumultuous journey. So, it's a bottle and then it's broken and then it's sharp and then it has to hit everything from cliffs to other rocks and shells and sand. It's drug around sometimes for years and years before it's the smooth piece we find when we look down and pick up that pretty stone on the beach walk. So I love to talk about sea glass in a way that we can understand that we are beautifully broken in life. So, it's not that we're broken people, but our lives are broken and just on this earth. That's just the truth. And
Yeah.
so, but God uses the sharp edges and he's the one that softens it. And, through all the shifting sands that we go through in our stories, they all look different from each other, but they have the same themes of God working in our lives for his glory.
Yeah.
And so, part of that is just when we see beauty in the brokenness, it does take us slowing down to see that. It's easier just to plow through because we're going through a hard time. We don't want to see anything good about it right now. It's not
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes looking back. And so I just like to remember the sea glass. It went through a really long journey to get where it is today on a pair of earrings or a candle. Yeah.
Wow. I love that so much. I definitely have wanted you to share about the transformation of the sea glass. It's just such a beautiful analogy of that, you know, yeah, it takes us a journey to
Mm-hmm.
where we're on this journey and um just reminds me how God can bring beauty from ashes, you know.
Yeah.
So just so good. So good. Okay, so can you tell us what was your favorite part about writing Live Slowly?
Oh, yeah. So it was a hard, vulnerable book to write, but there were so many pockets of joy in the writing as well. And I think one of my favorite ones was going back to the island in my mind. I tell a lot of island stories in the
Yeah.
book, just as examples, and hopefully you can find something in that that resonates with your life as well. But I think that had to be one of my favorite parts. When I was little, I didn't realize how special it was to grow up on an island in the Caribbean. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize like people saved up to go to come, to the island for a vacation. I saw it was when I was older that I realized that. So probably going back to some of those stories was precious and helped me slow down in
Mhm.
this writing process to really be present to my stories and how that will help the reader find their own stories and help them connect with how to live slowly. So that was a
Yeah.
gift.
Yay. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask because it's just such a beautiful read and it does take us, the reader, to island life. And so it's just so beautiful. I'm so glad that you put your stories of island life in this book so we can
Good.
feel and sense that as well. So it's so beautiful. So, can you let our listeners know how to connect with you and where they can find your beautiful book?
Sure. So the book is published with Ivy Press. We're book buddies, and you can order it there, or you can just order it on Amazon. Yeah, and then if you go to my website, jodigrubbs.com, pretty much anything there that you need to find should be there.
Yay. And I
Good.
wanted to do something special for the listeners today. Can you close us out with a benediction?
Yes, I would be happy to. So I'm reading a benediction from part 1 in my book. In this season of pause, with waves crashing all around you, may you lament what has been lost and rejoice over new mercies while holding hands open in absolute hope.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Jodi, for sitting with me on the Can You Just Sit With Me podcast. I'm looking forward to sitting again in person in real life. But thank you so much. This has been such a sweet time.
Me too. Thank you for having me on as your guest and your friend, Natasha. I've loved it.
Thank you. That brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks again for joining me, and thanks for listening to Can You Just Sit With Me? If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to come back for my next episode of Can You Just Sit With Me? Until then, this is Natasha Smith, helping you to find hope in grief, hope in the hard place, and hope in the challenging times of life. Be sure to connect with me across social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at I'm Natasha Smith.